They say loyalty always pays off. But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when 12 years of devotion ends with silence and a closed door? Her name was Elena Morales. To the Whitmores, she was just the maid. But in reality, she was so much more. She was the one who made their house a home. For 12 long years, Elena woke up before the sun. She'd prepare breakfast, iron clothes, and pack lunchboxes for kids who called her Miss Ellie. She knew their routines better than their own parents did. She never missed a single day, not one. She was there for every birthday, every scraped knee, every late-night fever. When the Whitmores fought, she stayed quiet and cleaned up the aftermath. When their daughter cried, it was Elena who held her until she fell asleep. To her, they weren't just her employers. They were her family. But no one ever asked about her life. No one wondered where she went when she left their driveway each night. They never saw the small, dim apartment she returned to, or the dreams she wrote on scraps of paper after midnight. Elena wanted more than to serve. She wanted to build. A small cleaning business, one that treated workers with dignity, something she never truly had. But she pushed that dream aside because she believed loyalty would be enough. She believed kindness would be remembered. She believed that love, even when unspoken, was mutual. She couldn't have been more wrong. It started with a whisper, a quiet, poisonous thing that slithered through the halls of the Whitmore mansion. Her name was Clara Hastings, the new assistant. Young, polished, the kind of woman who knew how to smile without meaning it. From the moment she arrived, Elena felt the air shift. Clara walked in wearing expensive perfume and ambition in her eyes. She wasn't there to assist. She was there to replace. At first, it was small things. A misplaced vase here, a forgotten errand there, all blamed on Elena. Clara would sigh dramatically, whispering just loud enough for Vivian Whitmore to hear. "Oh, I think Elena's been distracted lately. Maybe she's getting tired." Vivian, once warm and trusting, began to grow distant. Her morning greetings turned to nods. Her smiles disappeared altogether. Elena noticed. Of course she did. The tone of the house changed. Cold, cautious. She began feeling eyes on her as she cleaned, as if every sweep of her hand was being judged. One afternoon, she overheard Clara in the study. "I just don't think she fits the image anymore," Clara said softly. "You know, the house is evolving. Maybe it's time the staff does too." Elena froze behind the door. Her heart thudded, heavy with a feeling she hadn't known in years. Fear. The fear of losing not just her job, but her place in the only family she'd ever known. She wanted to speak up, to defend herself, to tell Mrs. Whitmore the truth. But something in Vivian's eyes warned her. The trust was already gone. And for the first time in 12 years, Elena realized this house she'd built her life around was starting to push her out. The sound was deafening. Porcelain against marble, sharp, final, unforgiving. Elena stood frozen in the grand hallway, staring at the shattered remains of the Whitmores' prized vase. The one Mrs. Whitmore claimed was worth more than a car. It had slipped. Just once in 12 years, her hands had failed her. Before she could even reach for a broom, Vivian Whitmore's heels clicked sharply against the floor. Her face pale with fury. "What have you done?" Vivian hissed. "Do you have any idea what this costs?" "I'm so sorry, ma'am," Elena stammered. "It was an accident. I'll pay for it from my salary. I promise." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Pay for it? You think your salary could cover this?" Her voice echoed through the halls, drawing everyone in. Mr. Whitmore, the children, even Clara, lurking in the doorway with that faint, satisfied smile. Then came the next blow. "You know," Vivian said, her tone colder now. "Things have gone missing lately. Jewelry, small items. I tried to ignore it, but—" She let the words hang in the air, poisonous and heavy. Elena's stomach twisted. "You can't mean you think I took something?" Vivian didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than accusation. "The children, the ones Elena had fed, tutored, tucked into bed when they were sick, stood by the staircase, staring at the floor." Mr. Whitmore rubbed his temple, avoiding her gaze. "Please," Elena whispered. "You know me. I would never—" But the decision was already made. "Pack your things," Vivian said, voice sharp as glass. "I want you gone before dinner." Elena's breath caught in her throat. In that moment, the 12 years she'd given, the laughter, the care, the loyalty, vanished into thin air. To them, she wasn't family. She was just the maid. Disposable, replaceable, forgotten. And as she turned toward the servants' quarters, fighting back tears, Clara's faint perfume lingered in the air, sweet, victorious, and suffocating. The sky opened up just as they handed her the envelope. A single week's pay, not even enough to cover her rent. "Mrs. Whitmore's orders," the butler muttered, unable to meet her eyes. Elena nodded quietly, fingers trembling as she zipped her worn-out bag. 12 years of service, reduced to a few folded uniforms and a handful of memories. The mansion's grand doors slammed shut behind her. The sound echoed through the driveway, louder than thunder. Rain poured in sheets, cold and merciless, soaking through her thin coat in seconds. She didn't have an umbrella. She didn't have a plan. All she had was the weight of what just happened. 12 years, gone. No thank you. No goodbye from the children she'd raised. Just the sound of tires splashing through puddles as the Whitmore's luxury cars rolled past her. As if she had never existed. She walked for miles that night, through empty streets and neon reflections, her shoes squelching with every step. When the city finally went quiet, she found herself in a park, sitting on a bench beneath a flickering streetlight. Raindrops traced down her face, blending with tears she refused to admit were there. For the first time in years, there was no one left to take care of. No one calling her name. No one waiting for her to come home. She looked at her reflection in a puddle. Tired eyes, cracked hands, but still, something fierce burned behind them. "They took my job," she whispered into the rain, her voice trembling but steady. "But they'll never take my worth." And for a moment, the storm didn't feel so cold anymore. The next morning, Elena woke up to the sound of city buses and cold air brushing her cheeks. She hadn't slept much, just enough to remember who she was. There was no mansion now, no servants' quarters, no marble floors, just her and the world that had already moved on without her. But something inside her had changed. She took whatever work she could find, scrubbing diner floors before dawn, wiping chalk dust off classroom desks, polishing mirrors in cheap motels. The pay was small, the hours long, but the rhythm of cleaning became her meditation. Each mop stroke whispered a lesson, each insult from a rude client, a reminder of what she'd overcome. She started carrying a small, tattered notebook in her pocket. During lunch breaks, she'd jot things down. Why do cleaners still have to carry heavy buckets? There should be a faster way to dry floors. If no one will give us respect, we'll build it ourselves. She didn't know it yet, but those words were the foundation of something far bigger than she could imagine. At night, she'd stare at that notebook under the dim light of her rented room. Every page was covered in ideas, sketches, questions. It wasn't just paper, it was her blueprint for freedom. People saw a tired maid, but what they didn't see was a mind quietly designing an empire. One idea, one lesson, one cleaning cloth at a time. Elena stood in front of a cracked mirror one morning, tying her worn apron, and said softly to herself, "Enough surviving. It's time to build." That same week, she sold her old jewelry, borrowed money from a friend, and turned her small kitchen into a workshop. There, she mixed her first batch of homemade cleaning formulas, lemon, vinegar, baking soda, and labeled them by hand with a name that felt like hope: Phoenix Clean Co. It started with one client, then two. Soon, word spread, not just about her spotless results, but about the way she treated her workers. Instead of hiring strangers, she reached out to the women she once worked beside, the ones ignored, underpaid, forgotten. Single mothers, immigrants, widows. She gave them uniforms with their names embroidered in gold thread, paid them fair wages, taught them to walk into homes not as help, but as professionals. In every training session, she'd say, "We don't just clean houses, we restore dignity. We leave behind pride in every polished floor." Slowly, Phoenix Clean Co. became more than a business. It became a movement. And though the world still saw a maid with a mop, Elena knew she was holding something far more powerful. A spark strong enough to burn down the walls that once kept her small. It started with a single video. A client recorded Elena training her team, showing them how to treat every home with care, how to fold towels perfectly, how to walk in with pride. The clip went viral overnight. Millions watched, not just because of the cleaning tips, but because of her story, a former maid building an empire from scratch. Soon, headlines read, "From Maid to Billionaire, the woman who redefined respect." Interviews, podcasts, magazine covers. Everyone wanted to know her secret. But Elena just smiled and said, "It's not magic. It's work, heart, and a little bit of lemon oil." Then came the breakthrough, a cleaning service app that connected clients directly with trained workers. Transparent pay, fair contracts, instant bookings. Something the industry had never seen before. Her app exploded in popularity. Within months, Phoenix Clean Co. expanded to multiple cities. And within a few years, Elena Morales, once fired with nothing but a small bag in her hand, was being called the cleaning queen. She didn't just change her life. She changed the lives of hundreds of women who finally felt seen, valued, and respected. And somewhere, behind the glamour and the success, Elena still kept that old mop, a reminder of where her kingdom began. It was a quiet morning. the kind that usually began with coffee and emails. But that day, Elena's phone rang. "Miss Morales," the voice said, "a foreclosed property just came up for sale. It's quite the estate. You might want to see it." She almost ignored it until she heard the address. Whitmore Drive. Her hand froze. That address wasn't just a property. It was a memory. It was the house where she had given 12 years of her life and been thrown out like she never mattered. For a moment, she just sat there, silent, staring at the screen. Then, softly, she said, "Send me the papers." Within hours, she was in her office, signing documents with the same calm precision that once folded the Whitmores' laundry. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Cash payment. Full ownership. The mansion that once symbolized her humiliation was now hers. As she placed her signature on the final line, she whispered, "Poetic, isn't it? Cleaning their floors, only to end up owning their walls." The Whitmores arrived in a modest rental car, a far cry from the luxury sedans they once flaunted. Vivian stepped out first, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Her husband trailed behind, defeated, eyes sunken with worry. They had no idea who the new owner was, only that she wanted to meet them before finalizing a potential lease. The butler opened the door, and there she was, Elena Morales, not in a maid's uniform, but in an elegant suit, poised and calm, confidence radiating from her like quiet fire. Vivian froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. "Elena?" Elena smiled faintly. "Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore, please, come in." They stepped inside, into the same grand foyer where she'd once scrubbed floors on her knees. Now, her heels echoed against the marble they used to walk past her on. Vivian's eyes darted around, desperate to make sense of it. You own this house?" Elena turned slowly, meeting her gaze. "Yes, I bought it last month." A pause, then softly, "Funny how things come full circle, isn't it?" Mr. Whitmore stammered. We had no idea." "I'm sure you didn't," Elena interrupted gently. She looked around, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You fired me once for breaking something replaceable." She took a breath, eyes steady. "So I built something unbreakable." And as they stood there, silent, ashamed, and small, Elena Morales, the woman they once called just the maid, walked past them as the true owner of everything they once thought was theirs. The mansion, once filled with whispers of superiority, now buzzed with laughter, hope, and the hum of new beginnings. Elena stood on the same marble floors, but this time surrounded by women in uniforms bearing a golden phoenix emblem. Single mothers, widows, immigrants, women who had been invisible to the world, just like she once was. On the front lawn, a new sign gleamed under the sunlight. The Phoenix Training Academy, rise from within. A local news crew interviewed her. "Elena, what inspired this transformation?" She smiled, her voice calm and certain. "Because every woman here deserves to be seen, not as someone who serves, but someone who builds." She glanced at the mansion behind her, its walls now filled with purpose, not pride. "This place once reminded me of what I lost," she said softly. "Now it reminds me of what I became." Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Elena walked through the academy's hallways. She paused near a window, the same one where she once stood, watching the Whitmore's world from the outside. Now, the world was watching her. Her voice, steady and reflective, carried through the closing moments. They tried to bury me in dust, but they forgot. Dust is where diamonds are born. The grand gates of the mansion, now glowing with the Phoenix Clean Co. insignia. A phoenix, rising from ashes, the symbol of every woman who dared to rebuild her life.